Thanks for staying with us right here on Sunrise as we continue this morning while I look back at a developing story around the passing of Mama Winnie Mandela. Today, the ANC Women's League in Gauteng will hold a procession from Uncle Tom's Hall in Soweto to Winnie's home, which is 2 kilometers away. ENCA's Michelle Craig is outside the Icon's home in Soweto this morning, and we're going to catch up with her and get to find out how the mood is like this morning. Michelle, thanks very much for joining us. We know that Mama Winnie had a great part to play within the Women's League movement and the women's movement, around the country and the continent. In terms of like what her work will represent and the walk that the women will be doing this morning, what do we understand about that?
Well, a very good morning to you, Penny. Good morning to our viewers as well. Perhaps let's just take a step back there. Today, of course, being the second day in the days of national mourning declared by the presidency, which will take place from yesterday, essentially, up until the evening of the funeral service, which we know has been set down for the 14th of this month. Mama Winnie, of course, having been granted an official funeral. The statement from the presidency saying a special official funeral, Category 1, entails elements of military ceremonial honours and is declared in line with the presidency's state, official and provincial official funeral policy for persons of extraordinary credentials, specifically designated by the President of the Republic of South Africa. That is how Mama Winnie is being remembered by the state. Of course, flags being flown at half-mast as well around the country and around the world at diplomatic missions around the world as well. Another fitting tribute to the courageous life of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. But yes, as you say, a number of processions planned for the duration of these national days of mourning. Today as well, later on this afternoon, the ANC Women's League calling on its branches around the country to meet at Uncle Tom's Community Hall, which we're told is about 2 kilometers from the house of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, which we are standing in front of once again today. If you can see the ANC flag being flown, as always, outside her home here. We saw some members of the ANC Women's League coming to pay their respects just yesterday, but today is really an official procession which will take place from Uncle Tom's Community Hall. Those members who are being called on will then walk, take this 2-kilometer walk to her home, where they'll then lay some flowers, pay their last respects, and I'm sure visit with the family as well.
Right, so this is a Women's League from around Gauteng that will be coming through there this morning. Do we know that is it a prayer procession? Are they just walking to lay flowers at the house? And what sort of activities actually also happening this morning around the house that you might have observed?
Well, I don't know if our viewers can listen to some of the ambient noises coming through from around the home here. There is, of course, a funeral procession. Perhaps our cameraman can just give you a look at what's going on. Funeral arrangements are in full swing here. I think what's happening, what we're seeing is a marquee of sorts, which is being set up on the grounds surrounding the family home of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. So funeral arrangements now in full swing as we lead up to the countdown to her funeral, which has been set down for the 14th of April. An official memorial service also set down for the 11th of April, just a few days before that. But yes, this ANC Women's League procession, one of a number of sort of tributes being taken place since we heard the news in the final days of the long Easter weekend. The Easter weekend coming to a rather abrupt end with the news of Mama Winnie's passing just 2 days ago now almost. And a number of people we've seen coming through yesterday. Julius Malema also coming through with around 300 or so EFF supporters as well. Throngs of people coming to pay their last respects to the home of Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela. Julius Malema himself saying that he is not a visitor here, that he slept here, that he had dinners here, that he met with the mother of the nation on numerous occasions. You'll know that the relationship between Julius Malema and Mama Winnie was a very, very close one. And he is known to have said that, of course, she didn't go so far as joining the EFF itself, but they were comrades in arms. They were very close in what they believed the nation needed to take it ahead.
All right,
and
Michelle,
so this ANC Women's League procession will be one of a number of of processions we'll see in the coming days in the lead up to her funeral.
All right, we're going to have to leave it at that. And I'm sure, of course, that marquee that you're seeing there is to put up a tent on the outside for all the throngs of people who are visiting the home, I'm sure, for the prayer services that will be happening there. Remember that she was elected as the African National Congress Women's League president on the 8th of December in 1993, and she was re-elected in 1997. Faith is standing by to talk autism as we look back at World Autism Day, which happened over the past weekend as well. Faith?
Well, thank you very much for that, Penny. Yes, indeed. So the 2nd of April 2018 was World Autism Day. And Autism Day is about creating awareness as well as acceptance of the condition. Raising an autistic child comes with many challenges, particularly if there is a lack of support. And we understand that from the studies that have been shown regarding autism. So this morning, we're going to be taking a look at autism as well as how it can be managed. That is the right term for it, how it can be managed. And of course, to continue with that conversation, we're joined in studio by industrial psychologist Sabelo Gumede, as well as occupational therapist Nonhlanhla Simelane. Now, remember, you at home can be part of our discussion all the time. Remember, leave your comments on our Facebook as well as our Twitter pages. If you want to give us a call, please do so. Remember, the number to dial is 011 447 1742, alternatively 1620. It is that easy, and then we get to have a chat this morning. Thank you so much to the both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
I know that we're having such an interesting conversation off air because it is a topic that, and we've been saying this quite a number of times, is that it's not researched enough.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to the South African context. In fact, mental illness in the South African context is not researched enough.
Yes.
But let's talk about autism specifically. Statistics are interesting. I mean, we're talking about how, I think it's 1 in 48 boys are affected by autism, and then 1 in 168 girls are affected by autism. Why such figures and disparities between the two individuals?
Well, the condition is actually more predominant in boys than girls. So that's what the research has found in the past years. But there's no specific cause as to why boys more than girls. Yeah.
And of course, I mean, looking at the characteristics, and I know that Sabelo will be speaking from an industrial psychological perspective, and we're going to go into the work environment, especially about autism, but the characteristic, what characterizes it? Because you mentioned something interesting off air, was that you do not know as a mother before you give birth that your child is autistic. It's one of those mental illnesses that you find out at birth. So what are the characteristics?
Would be, you know, a problem with speech and also problem with motor, physical abilities, and also problem with, you know, social interactions. You know, you'd see at an early stage that, you know, maybe your kid is struggling to play with other kids, you know, at school, maybe they are alone, you know, they're antisocial. So those are the actually, you know, are symptoms that, you know, a parent can actually, you know, be look out to identify and actually refer the kid either to a mental institution or any facility. But
at what age is that? Nonhlanhla, I mean, what age do I determine the fact that my child now is not associating with other kids? Because from what I understand is that it can be a regressive state. In other words, a child can be making progress to a specific level, right? Let's say that maybe till 3 or 4, and then all of a sudden the child regresses. So when does that happen?
It usually starts at a very early age. You can actually determine that at the age 2.
Okay.
So, the sooner you take the child to relevant medical experts, the sooner you can find out what is wrong with your child, and the sooner the condition can be managed. So if you take it, maybe if you stay with the child at home for longer, it is more problematic for the child to actually integrate in the community. So we always encourage parents to, you know, take their children to any healthcare facility that can assist in diagnosing the child with whatever condition that they may have, and obviously ruling out any other conditions, you know, that may affect the child.
Got you.
Yes.
So we're going to break it down into layman's terms, because I think that for any parent that is watching, or for any individual, especially in the workplace, who are looking at perhaps expanding their personnel, and they're looking at, okay, I need somebody who is autistic, and I need to know how to manage that situation or how to manage that employee, this is a beneficial conversation to them. So we're talking about how when it comes to children, they regress, they're more withdrawn, there's a speech issue, so they're not able to articulate themselves as often, or as a normal child would, in inverted commas normal. And what else? Are they more, because there's another issue of, you know, kids being able to lash out, or they lash out, or they you know, they act out or they make a noise.
Yes.
Is that another characteristic that's quite prevalent?
Definitely it is, you know. So with regards to the this issue in the workplace, you know, it's an issue that has been overlooked, and as you have indicated, there's less research on it, you know. So it's one issue that is very pervasive, you know, that needs to be, you know, actually taken, you know, care of, you know, immediately, you know. Because really in the workplace you would find employers not even employing, you know, not even looking at the CV of people with autism, you know. And you have legislation such as Employment Equity Act that actually advocates for these people, that they needs to be taken, you know, on board. And also, you know, in terms of work environment, it needs to be, you know, work friendly and also be accommodative in terms of the...
When we're saying work friendly, and I know that because you're coming in from an occupational therapist perspective, so that means that a person with autism needs to see an occupational therapist so that they're able to integrate better with the broader community base. But when you're saying that a conducive work environment here, what are we talking about? Because I can tell you now from the conversations we were having, if a person with autism comes into a Sunrise studio, for example, the harsh lights, already that's a problem, right? Because there's a light sensitivity with a child or with a person or an individual that is autistic. So an environment such as this would not necessarily be conducive. So what kind of an environment is conducive?
Let's say, I mean, like in factories, you know, in factories where they do repetitive work that would not, you know, require their cognitive abilities, you know, and their abstract thinking, you know. So work that, you know, can be actually routine and also be easily managed, you know, that kind of work, you know, can be actually be more, you know, feasible.
Whatever it is that is routine.
Exactly.
Whatever it is that is routine, don't change the routine.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And it also has to be, you know, accommodative in nature, that every employee in the workplace, you know, is aware that, you know, this is how they can assist. Like, for example, they need to have coach. They also need to have core employees that would actually constantly, you know, be there and assisting them, you know, in terms of how they need to carry out their work, because they know they work 100% now, and the next day, you know, they're struggling with it. So they really need someone who's going to be there and be assistive.
Okay, so talking about being assistive, and you'll be able to articulate to this on Nonhlanhla, the support that is available for individuals with autism as well as families with autistic children. How much of a support is there? You're talking about the work environment. The work environment in itself needs a support base.
Exactly.
And is that support base expensive? Let's be realistic now. Is that support base expensive? And how do I get that support as an individual who's living with autism and who wants to be employed?
Actually, it is expensive, Faith, especially in the South African context. You know, there's more, when we're speaking now about children, there's more private institutions that cater for these children.
Gotcha.
So the government specifically does not have institutions that cater for the children at a broader base. So we need more of that in the government institutions, you know, where you find the parents without financial, you know, like stable financial background. Yes, so that they can be easily included in such programs. So when you get children who cannot afford, then it's more difficult for them to actually access such institutions, and then it's difficult for them to get treatment or management.
So where can I go? If I'm living with autism, if I've got a person who's got autism in my household, where can I go for support?
So at the moment, there are institutions, well, the education system is starting to have inclusive education, you know, in the primary levels. So there is... It's a little bit, you know, but I think our government is trying, but we need to increase it as much as possible. You know, and then you get the hospitals, when you get occupational therapists and speech therapists, which can assist in assessing the children and, yes, teach them coping skills and coping mechanisms. But unfortunately...